Welcome to my channel. The next video about my huge collection of coloring books. I want to start from the Search for the Light Bulb Boggler by David Haben. And this one is an example of a very nicely published book. Paper here, it's absolutely perfect. Book is one-sided and printed on a very thick paper which behaves very well with all pencil brands and with all water-based media I already used here. Neocolors, watercolor, gouache paint. I used graphite pencil, I used Inktense pencil, and everything worked really well. It's a steampunk style story, and when I color it, I try to maintain those slightly muted colors which for me are more traditional for steampunk pictures, and of course a lot of metal elements, so this one is perfect for practicing doing metal, then various fabrics and also leather. Here I combined pencils and I combined acrylic paint for the background. In this book I even can use my Derwent Color Soft pencil. They have several quite nice intense colors which can be used here for the leather, for dark green, dark wine red colors, everything which can help you to create Victorian style pictures or steampunk style pictures. When I started to color, I mostly selected pictures from the beginning of the book. So everything I did is concentrated in the first part of the book. Here I colored almost everything apart from this small detail with Neocolor crayons, and as I said, everything went very well. It's a real pleasure to work. I hope you can see how thick is paper, and I do love that the size of the book is slightly smaller comparing to normal books, so you can finish pictures in a relatively short time, especially when you can use watercolor first. Usually I'm not a huge fan of very thick black lines, but I think that for this style of the book I don't mind, and I never mask black lines here, just not for the style of David Haben. Now I have this one, and I think that you can recognize that for the background I used watercolors. I use usually here indigo, indifferent blue, all those quinacridone lilac, quinacridone violet colors, and then for the main character, of course, I use regular pencils, and all of them blend very well because tooth of the paper is also quite good. So here we have the story about a collectioner who created collection of the light bulb. Then the most precious one was stolen, and he hired the company of researchers like this one, and here we have these detectives or researchers to try and to find that precious light bulb. You can see that I experimented a lot here, especially with all those backgrounds. Again, crayons, then on top of it a little bit of acrylic paint to create impression that everything is surrounded by steam. And here I remember that I was quite proud how I did the glass and how I did the metal parts of this fantasy cars here are quite fun to color. Well, the small problem here is that if you want to color it as a story, then you have to repeat the same colors for the clothes, for the hair, beard of the main characters, but still we have many interesting things around, so I don't mind to repeat the same colors. I'm sure that sooner or later I will do more pictures here in the beginning of the book, so it will look more like a story. Another one where I used a lot of watercolors. I think that almost everything apart from faces and a little bit of texture here on the frame I did with watercolors, and it was quite good to experiment, and even such non-traditional for me watercolor combos, like to put on the same area a little bit of orange, yellow and blue. They really behave very well on this paper, so you can create a beautiful artificial and artistly looking stains, and you can use contrast colors. And even if we have those stains, I think that it matches the idea of steampunk, so I also tend to use a lot of black colors. I don't mind to use black here for shadows, which I usually don't do, but here it looks quite nice. Here I remember that I used quite famous watercolor by Daniel Smith. It's called The Moonlight. I believe so. Anyway, from just one watercolor you can create beautiful gradient from pink and lilac and gray. So it's granulating watercolor, and matching colors for this watercolor background I found in Derwent Graphitint and Derwent Inktense sets. You know that Graphitint and Inktense, they work together very well, so I use them for the bugler here, and then with regular pencils I added metal details to create nice color contrast between this muted gold and the coat of the bugler. This one is my favorite finished picture here, because here we have like comics. We have the path of this bugler. He tried to hide, then he traveled under the water in some kind of tunnels, then down the stairs, and you can see that we can practice how to do metal parts, how to do different tubes, how to do the steam. And again I combined Inktense, Graphitint, acrylic and regular pencils for some details. So it was quite fun to color in style of comics. And maybe you can notice that I used one bright pencil, this intense wine red, like elements on each of the 4 segments of this page, and I think that also it was quite good idea. It helps to show that actually we have 4 segments, 4 details of the path of the bugler. And another one, which was actually my first here, when detectives traveled over the city trying to find something suspicious or some traces of the bugler, and they traveled in quite fun thing. Yeah, here is their travel floating board. Sorry, I don't know how to call it. So here I used gouache for the background, because on the clouds I wanted to mask black lines, and for the rest I usually don't mask them. Nice book, and it's always very relaxing to work here. Next, probably let's completely change the style, and we will be looking at Japanese books. Actually they are English editions, but T.Tashiro is Japanese artist, so art style is Japanese. I can say that I'm 100% happy with the quality of these books. First, I was thinking that paper actually is good, but then I realized that even Neocolor crayons managed to bleed through here, and it was a huge problem, because here we have pictures with huge amount of tiny details, and also with huge empty backgrounds. So without something like watercolor or Neocolor, I can't color in such books. But then gradually I started to use more acrylic paints here, which is, well, far from perfect, but acceptable. And I even used clear gesso. Not 100% happy, because paper actually is a little bit too smooth without any actual tooth to it. So when you cover it with another layer of clear gesso, it becomes even more smooth, so even watercolor glides over the surface, and then pencils also start to glide. But it has a lot of adorable pictures like this one, and I definitely want to color. I just need to adjust a little bit more to these books. So that's why I mentioned in some of my previous videos that I plan to purchase some of them water-based markers, and I hope that they won't be bleeding through. Maybe markers, maybe felt tip pens, not alcohol but water-based, and I hope that they will help me to color these tiny details, because even with hard pencils, which I tend to use here like polychromos, sometimes it's still difficult to color such small details, and especially this one. Look at those tiny leaves. I can't imagine how to do them, at least with the media which I have now. So let me show you what I managed to color here. Well, for this spread I had some ups and downs. I started from the backgrounds, where I successfully used acrylic gouache. I have several pastel and muted colors, and it helped me to create this quite romantic looking background. Some muted lavender, then a very light pastel pink and pastel greens. I think that it's match the romantic nature of this Tanabata story, so it was quite interesting also to learn this Japanese story. Then the main characters also, I colored them without any problems. I knew that I wanted to use similar palettes for their clothes, and which colors to use I also knew. They are surrounded by the blackbirds. Sorry, I forgot again the name of the birds. Well, definitely today is not my very talkative day. Anyway, the problems started with the frame and with the background. First, I was thinking that this color palette of brown and then a delicate pink and light green for the details will work, but it looks a little bit ugly. Maybe because of the paper, maybe because of the color combo, but then miraculously, when I outlined each and every petal, each and every leaf with white, it started to work. I still don't know how. Maybe the white color created some freshness, some tenderness to this frame, but before it was outlined with white, it looked not very good, and now it looks like maybe part of the gemstone, maybe like some, you know, that beautiful wooden surfaces which have some parts made from pearl. And I decided that okay, such frame it can work. Then I needed to do the night sky, because we have here the story how two lovers were divided by Milky Way, and just once a year they can meet. And of course I wanted to create this Milky Way background between them. So first I applied a very dark paint, it's acrylic, and on top of it I played with my Pearl Friend watercolors. I have here Pearl Blue, a little bit of Pearl Lilac, and I do love that they created this slightly milky effect, chalky effect on top of the dark acrylic. So maybe it was a little bit messy, but in the end I think that I managed to show parts of the story, and I do love these backgrounds which I did with acrylic gouache behind the main characters. So ups and downs, as I said. Next one here is the page where I experimented with that clear gesso, so anything had bleeded through apart from the areas where probably I hadn't applied gesso very carefully. The good thing is that when we usually have nice page with main characters from the fairy tale, then on the back we have or pattern or some not very significant details or flower. So even if pictures, beautiful pictures, and their colors will bleed through, you won't be losing a very precious page on the back, but still I don't like to have stains, so I still try to find best media to color in these books. As I said, I prefer to use in these books slightly harder pencils, either Arteza or Polychromos. They work better on this smooth surface. Softer pencils are not so well here, or you will need to use again a lot of blender, and color gradients will look a little bit more rough and not so smooth. I can say that I love this one, and I just used it for experimenting how clear gesso will be here. That was my first spread in this book, and with this spread I am very happy. And on this background, when I started to apply very light Neocolor crayon in pastel yellow, I discovered that it's risky and it can bleed on the back. You can see that here we have very simple berries, and I don't plan to color them, but still you can see that some stains started to appear, and I decided that okay, I will color everything with just Polychromos pencils. So it took me quite a long time to do everything, but I think that both pages now look quite well. Of course, I did similar backgrounds again with dark brown, and then for the smaller details I simply used a golden marker. So frames are shiny, and the pictures are colored with Polychromos pencils. I think that my favorite part here is this ugly witch, but it was fun to color her. If you are interested, I have these videos for both pages on my YouTube channel, and as usual I will leave you links in the end of this video. So this spread I definitely love, but I remember how long it took me to do all those leaves and all the tiny flowers, and that's why I think that maybe with markers it can be quicker. I just need to find the right type of marker. In Fairy Tale book I also did several pictures. Of course I want to show you this nutcracker spread. Maybe I did it last year, and I remember that somehow I decided to use color softs here on the left side, mostly because they have quite nice blackberry, raspberry colors, which were exactly what I needed here for the background, but they glided over the surface, they slipped over it, and it was a nightmare trying to cover background with them relatively smooth without so many visible pencil strokes. But in the end I think that it worked. I can say that I'm 100% fan of the T.Tashiro style. Maybe some of her elements are not exactly for my taste, but some of the pictures and some compositions are quite good. For example, here I really love that it looks like we have two maybe elements and from Nutcracker, but definitely we have a theater here, so we have a couple of scenes from the theater. We have this curtain, and we have a one with more romantic scene, and one with the Red King and the Nutcracker himself. I definitely tried not to lose the Nutcracker, so that's why I selected this very intense blue for him and for the prince, of course, so they have similar colors to make this connection. Another connection is the same colors which I used for the cake and for Mary's. I hope that in English edition she is also called Mary. Anyway, for the dress, again with the tree behind I struggled a lot and it still looks flat, and probably that was the moment when I realized that actually we don't have a real Christmas tree, that we have a theater decoration, so that's normal that we have more flat tree and I don't have to struggle much with it. It's normal that it's flat. But I do love how I did all those halo around the candle lights and around other glowing things, all those beautiful decorations on the Christmas tree, and of course a lot of time for this red curtain. But I hope that it helped to create a really festive look here. And another page which I did in this book, it was this year, this autumn page. Of course I selected it because around the Halloween time everyone colored pictures with pumpkins, and I decided that I also will do picture with pumpkin, but from Cinderella. And on the background I struggled a lot. I wanted from the beginning to have dark background and this halo light coming from the magical wand. But first I tried to do this background with pencils, and it was terrible because I wasn't able to get smooth look without visible pencil strokes. Then on top of it I used black ink, then black acrylic. Oh well, it was a struggle. You can see that some parts they bleeded through, so I have black stains, but of course I won't be coloring such a page, so I don't care much. But at least now I got my dark background, and against the dark background beautiful dress of the fairy and also bright dress of Cinderella, they look quite nice. In the areas where I had some stains on the black background, where I wasn't able to do completely smooth background, I added those golden stars or sparkles coming from the magical wand, and in such way I masked some areas where I wasn't 100% happy with the coverage of the background. And you can imagine how long it took me to do all the details on the frame. I even used here a couple of Black Widow pencils. They are far from perfect for doing bigger elements because they also glide on the surface, but because of their harder tips, they were quite suitable for small elements. So mostly I again used Arteza and Polychromos pencils here. In the beginning I was thinking that I will manage to do the whole spread, but after struggle with the frame I decided that okay, I have my video with the list of colors which I used for the frame, so maybe the right side of the frame I can do next year. I intend of course to keep the same colors for the leaves, for the pumpkins, for the flowers, so I will use my video as a reference for the same colors. And then I will do this beautiful carriage and castle, but definitely not now. I can't color in this book for a long time, it's a little bit tiring. Yes, I think that's all I have here. I would like to color many pictures, they are nice, and you know that I love to color fairy tale illustrations, but I still can't adjust completely to the paper and to the style with so many details. The next one will be again book with fairy tales illustrations, and my shame on me, but this year I don't think that I have touched this book. I tried to do one page here last winter, I believe, and it wasn't very successful. I didn't like how I started to do background, so I abandoned it, and the whole this year I hadn't touched this book at all. And it's a pity because book is quite nice. It's one of my oldest books. I think that I had it even before I got my set of Prismacolor pencils, so it was one of my first purchases on Book Depository, and I think that it existed. At the time it was quite popular, now much less, and it existed in couple of different editions. It's translation from Korean, so originally it was created by Yoonji Park. Sorry, never learned how to pronounce her name correctly. And I have my edition, it's Waves of Color or Seven Seas Entertainment, because in this edition it's possible to use watercolor. Maybe not perfect, but as a first layer it's possible. I heard complaints from people who had probably the same book but from the other publishing company that their paper was not as good as here. Anyway, let me show you what I had here. A lot of old works, but still it's a big pleasure to look back at the beginning of my coloring hobby. I remember that here I used many pencils. I used even different color softs because they are not bad on this paper actually, even for the backgrounds. I used my budget pencils like Faber-Castell Eco. The background here was made with soft pastel. I tried to do some lighter areas, these circles, so you can see that parts of the background are highlighted, and those shelves with books, they are colorful. The rest are made with various shades of brown, just like this background. I thought that it can create something interesting to the background. Again, another colorful circle here, and brown with small addition of golden and bronze dots, which I did with acrylic paints. Here again, I think that to achieve this bright page, in the beginning of my hobby, I used all my pencils, Derwent Color Softs, Eco, and maybe even Kohinoor Mondeluz, everything I had. I think the background, yeah, it's pencils. And then on top of, I even tried to add some metallic, but not very successfully, wasn't very helpful. Here I simply did all those colorful books, usually not my favorite type of coloring to do all these patterns, but I was so mesmerized by the right side of this page. I do love these 3 books. So I decided that okay, in order to finish the whole spread, I will color also these more boring books. And these 3 books, they are absolutely beautiful, beautiful book spines with the castle, with flowers. I do love this tiny rabbit from Alice in Wonderland with clocks, with watches probably. And here we have adorable owl. And I do love that here begins the journey of the girl. Once upon a time, I really tried to use this bright yellow to attract attention like a starting point of the journey. The story is about the girl who probably dreamed, started to sleep inside the library, started to dream, and of course she traveled through her one favorite fairy tales stories. The girl and her cat, and the beginning of their journey. Some of the pictures I can't say that I love because everything here is good apart from these very strange trees. Yes, it's probably some unique treat of a huge park style, but I don't know yet how to color them. So with some of the pictures it was easier to select colors. And that was the page which I started to color and it was at the moment when I got new watercolors by White Knights. They created series of pastel watercolors, and you can see here their peach, lavender, pink, and coral colors, so I experimented here. But then I somehow did not very good start on the trees. I wanted to make them like chocolate trees. I don't know why. We have a lot of candies here, so maybe I thought that even pine trees can be made from chocolate, and somehow I abandoned it. Now when I look, I think that it wasn't ruined, maybe it wasn't such a bad start, apart from the beginning of the trees, which definitely can be improved because it's just the first layer. Everything else is not so bad. Why I decided to abandon it, I don't know. Maybe I wasn't in the right mood. Well, let's move to other pages, and that's another unfinished project. Here I did have problem with watercolors, but I don't know what it was, my own skills or paper. I did it in the very beginning when I was just a beginner even with watercolors, so I probably used too many colors for beginners and I didn't work quickly enough to be able to get a nice smooth flowing from one color into another, pigment absorbed into paper too quickly before I actually managed to create beautiful gradients. And it was the moment when I already knew that I will get a set of new colors, so just like with some of the pictures on A Night Voyage by Daria Song, I decided to abandon this one and to wait for new colors. I hoped that if I apply second layer of crayons and then activate them with water, they can help me to improve this one. Good thing that I still remember this idea. I'm sure that this page it can be saved, nothing too bad. At least you can save it with pencils, applying it in the areas where there are not very good two contrast stains, but of course it would require more time with pencils, and with new colors it can be quicker. So maybe I will find some inspiration and at least one of these two started spreads I can finish. I don't know, I will think about it. Next we have spread which I really love, and at that moment for me it was extremely difficult to finish. Everything was new for me. How to do water with watercolor. And there were a lot of tiny leaves which I didn't particularly like on the trees. I decided that at least some of those tiny leaves I convert into flowers, so that's why I have those lilac and purple flowers amongst the leaves, and I think that it helped to make the background less boring comparing to completely green. Then I tried to calculate all the reflections of the swans into the surface of the water. Mostly I used watercolors here for the background, only on the feathers. On the girl I used pencils, and it was the first time when I did white feathers, so it was my first attempt how to add delicate cream and grey shadows between feathers where they are connected in those rows, and then I outlined them with white acrylic. At that moment for me it was a huge discovery how to do white feathers. So I was extremely proud, at least of the right side of the page. I do love the girl, I do love her dress, which slightly correspond with the flower color of the flowers on the trees, and I do love the color of the swan. I think that this dress is beautiful. You can do it as a winter picture or you can do it as a fall picture. I always wanted to do this one. And many other beautiful pictures. As I said, it's a beautiful book and it's a pity that now it's not so popular. Another page where I used watercolors and acrylic. So here we have a story of a sandman. It's very colorful. Can't say that I love this part of the background, but the rest of it it's not bad, and it's very shiny because I sprinkled bronze acrylic, golden acrylic here and here. I think that now I use much lesser amount of all those golden and shiny elements comparing to the beginning of my hobby. I don't know why. So many beautiful pictures. I always wanted to do this one with gouache. Not a huge fan of these trees, but everything else is quite good. And another beautiful page. This one is a beautiful winter picture. Maybe I can do it in January. I will think about it. Now let's move forward, and that was the spread where I discovered that actually Derwent color softs are quite good on this paper. Even the background and the dress and the background here the armor of the cards. Everything I did with color softs. Maybe I just added a couple of light Prisma colors for some small details here. Probably I had used powder blue and some blush pink and pink colors, but 95% were made with color softs and they were good here. I definitely will count on them for my next projects here. And page where I again combined watercolors. It was fun to experiment with all those leaves, how to do all those leaves with watercolors, and I think that they look quite interesting and bright. Here I almost managed to ruin the background. I don't know why I decided to add some bouquet background. The good thing is that I switched quite quickly to the soft pastels, so it doesn't distract attention from the main image, but here it looks dirty. I don't remember. I think that I started to do background with watercolor. I realized that it's a mistake and I switched to soft pastel. The girl I did with pencils to make difference in colors and to be able to work more carefully on the shading, on the details. So here she is dreaming with the book of fairy tales, and it's the end of the story here. Very nice book.